Australia plans to halve migrant intake and tighten student visa rules. China and Philippines boats collide in contested South China Sea. State Department says China's actions in East China Sea undermine regional stability. U.S. considers missile launch notification framework with China. TikTok to spend $1.5 billion for Goto's Indonesia shop. Hong Kong, Patriots only election ends up with voter turnout of 27.5%. Nvidia CEO aims to set up a base in Vietnam. Japan faces disruption in food supplies as cold storage falls short.
Hello, I'm Johnny. Thank you for joining us on Funday News. It's Tuesday, December 12th, and here are your top stories. On Monday, Australia said it would tighten visa rules for international students and low-skilled workers that could halve its migrant intake over the next 2 years. Under the new policies, international students would need to secure higher ratings on English tests, and there would be more scrutiny on a student's second visa application that would prolong their stay. Prime Minister Anthony Albanese over the weekend said Australia's migration numbers needed to be wound back to a sustainable level.
Australian Home Affairs Minister Clare O'Neil said, "It's not just about this moment. This is about Australia's future." O'Neil said the government's targeted reforms were already putting downward pressure on net overseas migration and would further contribute to an expected decline in migrant numbers. The net immigration in Australia was expected to have peaked at a record 510,000 in 2022-23. O'Neil said the increase in net overseas migration in 2022-23 was mostly driven by international students.
A Philippine boat and a Chinese Coast Guard ship collided near a contested reef in the South China Sea on Sunday, and both countries are placing the blame on each other. The Philippines accused China of targeting civilian supply vessels in the Second Thomas Shoal in the Spratly Islands. The BBC, citing a statement from the National Task Force for the West Philippine Sea, reported that a Chinese Coast Guard ship ran into one of the two supply boats and caused severe damage to the engine of one boat with a water cannon.
The BBC reported that China accused the Philippine boat of deliberately colliding into its ship after disregarding our multiple stern warnings. Just 1 day before, the Philippines accused the Chinese Coast Guard of using water cannons against 3 of its vessels. The Wall Street Journal reported the Coast Guard ships sprayed water cannons at the ships as they were about 1.4 and 1.9 nautical miles from the contested shoal. The boats were blasted by water cannons attack at least 8 times.
The United States has called out China for interfering in the Philippines' maritime operations and undermining regional stability, urging Beijing to stop its dangerous and destabilizing conduct in the South China Sea. In a December 10th statement shared by the U.S. Embassy in Manila on Monday, U.S. State Department spokesperson Matthew Miller said, obstructing supply lines to this long-standing outpost and interfering with lawful Philippines maritime operations undermines regional stability.
Over the weekend, the Chinese Coast Guard called on the Philippines to stop its provocative acts, saying China would continue to carry out law enforcement activities in its waters. The United States has called on China to comply with a 2016 arbitral ruling that invalidated its sweeping claims in the South China Sea. The United States also reiterated its support for treaty ally, the Philippines, and reaffirmed its commitment to the Mutual Defense Pact between the two countries.
A senior U.S. State Department official told Nikkei Asia the U.S. is weighing a proposal to exchange missile launch notifications with China. The senior U.S. official said that Washington hopes to hold talks on arms control with China early next year, and launch notification is one of the concrete measures under consideration within the U.S. government. The official said the U.S. and China should take initial confidence-building measures such as launch notification to help create mutual trust.
The U.S. official said, "The fact that China has it with Russia demonstrates they appreciated the significance of the stabilizing nature. That's what we are trying to build on." The official said that although the U.S. shared agenda items in advance of working-level talks on arms control in November, there were several issues that the Chinese participants were not authorized to address. There were no participants from the Chinese Ministry of National Defense and People's Liberalization Army.
Bloomberg reported that ByteDance Limited's TikTok agreed to invest $1.5 billion in a joint venture with Indonesia's Goto Group, part of a pact that lets the Chinese company restart its shopping app in its biggest online retail market. The company said on Monday that the social media giant will combine its Indonesian TikTok shop business with Goto's e-commerce unit Tokopedia. TikTok gets a 75% stake in that combination, which will run the shopping features of TikTok's social media app in Indonesia.
Bloomberg said the deal is unusual for ByteDance, which is effectively taking over a prominent local online commerce player in a major overseas market. The agreement, under which Goto becomes a passive backer of the Tokopedia operation, allows ByteDance to restart its Indonesian business and comply with regulations introduced to halt its online retail service just as it was gaining traction against Sea Limited and Goto. The Indonesian government has signaled that it's approving TikTok and Goto's new pact.
A Patriots-only district election in Hong Kong that barred opposition Democrats from the ballot sheet amid a national security squeeze had a record low voter turnout of 27.5%, as many voters spurned what was seen as an undemocratic poll. For this election, directly elected seats were slashed by nearly 80%, while all candidates were required to undergo national security background checks and secure nominations from the two pro-government committees.
Hong Kong's leader John Lee again defended their legitimacy given a need to secure stability in Hong Kong. The previous lowest turnout was 35.8% in 1999. 4 years ago at the last such election during Hong Kong's mass pro-democracy protests, a record 71% turnout brought about a landslide victory for the Democratic camp in a fiercely contested poll. At least 3 pro-democracy and non-pro-establishment groups, including moderates, and even some pro-Beijing figures failed to meet the thresholds of this election.
The Vietnamese government said on Sunday, citing U.S. chipmaker Nvidia's chief executive, that the U.S. tech giant aims to establish a base in Vietnam to develop the country's semiconductor industry, as it considers the Vietnamese market an important one. The Vietnamese government statement cited Jensen Huang after his meeting with Prime Minister Pham Minh Chinh. The base will be for attracting talent from around the world to contribute to the development of Vietnam's semiconductor ecosystem and digitalization.
Reuters reported Nvidia's CEO, Jensen Huang, said the company viewed Vietnam as its home and affirmed its plans to set up a center in the country. Vietnam, which is home to large chip assembling factories including Intel's largest production site, is trying to expand into chip designing and possibly chip making. A document published by the White House in September showed Intel has already partnered with Vietnam's leading tech companies to deploy AI in the cloud, automotive and healthcare industries.
Nikkei Asia reported that Japan is about to be on the verge of a food supply crisis. Many refrigerated warehouses are aging rapidly, and it will be very difficult to maintain the distribution of fresh and frozen foods. High construction costs and land scarcity are shackling the replacement and expansion of those temperature-controlled storage units. There is growing concern among logistics operators in Japan that refrigerated warehouses that store frozen foods and agricultural and livestock products will come into short supply.
According to the Japan Association of Refrigerated Warehouses, whose members are warehouse companies and related businesses, 34% of warehouses in Japan were over 40 years old, the benchmark age for replacement, as of June 2022. Nikkei said if 30% of small and medium-sized businesses' refrigerated warehouses that are over 40 years old were closed down as of 2032, the demand for such warehouses would exceed the supply in 36 out of Japan's 47 prefectures.
The answer for yesterday was A, association. The cat soon made the association between human beings and food. Did you answer correctly? Now let's delve into the news of TikTok to spend $1.5 billion for Goto's Indonesia shop. Number 1, joint venture. 合资企业. I want to know more about the joint venture policy of your country. Number 2, pact. 条约、协议、公约. They have made a pact with each other not to speak about their differences in public. Number 3, stake. 股本、股份. He holds a 40% stake in the company. Next, we have a multiple choice question for everyone to practice. Which answer would you choose? You can write your answer in the comment section. The correct answer will be announced tomorrow. And that's all for today's Funday News. Be sure to tune in to Funday News from Monday to Friday and click the link below to join Funday for free. I'm Johnny Wu, your host. I'll see you next time.